This is Stu Epperson from the Truth Talk podcast, connecting current events, pop culture, and theology, and we're so grateful for you that you've chosen the Truth Podcast Network. It's about to start in just a few seconds. Enjoy it, and please share it around with all your friends. Thanks for listening, and thanks for choosing the Truth Podcast Network.
This is the Truth Network.
Now we get down to tax of brass. Who are you, Jack Frost? What is your center?
My center?
If Man and Moon chose you to be a guardian, you must have something very special inside. Here, this is how you see me, no? Very big, intimidating. But if you get to know me a little, well, go on.
You are downright jolly.
But not just jolly. I am also mysterious and fearless and caring. And at my center,
There's a tiny wooden baby.
look closer. What do you see?
Yeah, big eyes.
Yes, big eyes, very big, because they are full of wonder. That is my center. It is what I was born with. Eyes that have always seen the wonder in everything. Eyes that see lights in the trees and magic in the air. This wonder is what I put into the world. And what I protect in children. It is what makes me a guardian. It is my center. What is yours?
Welcome to the Christian Car Guy Radio Show.
I say this calls for action, and now.
You are the center of it all, the universe we bless it all. The majesty, I surrender all.
Now we get down to tax of brass. Yes, today's Christian Car Guy show is, get ready for this, the Naval of the Universe. The Naval of the Universe today on the Christian Car Guy show, right? The center, the place of your freedom, right? Where you were free to move about the country is when you were born, when your naval was formed, right? I don't know if you ever thought about those things, but today we are getting down to tax of brass, and we are going to discuss this concept. So our intro, you might have noticed, was from The Rise of the Guardians. I hope you've seen that movie. It's spectacular. That was Santa Claus that was speaking, talking about his eyes of wonder. And for those who are wondering what was happening there, that Jack Frost, his young friend, was opening up what they call a Russian nesting doll, right? It's a doll inside a doll inside a doll, and it gets down to a little baby about the size of an acorn, and that just had these big eyes, right? The eyes that were full of wonder. And then you heard Hillsong with their music, The Center of My Life. So, as always, Bob, and you might have guessed this, today's show is brought to you by Hebrew Letter. And this Hebrew Letter today, it's called a psalmic, and I bet you've seen it everywhere, because it's just a circle. It is just a circle. It kind of looks like a navel when it comes to think of it. Just saying. You might see it in Stonehenge. I don't know if you ever thought about that, or what a navel might be, that Stonehenge was looking for the navel of the universe. Many ancient civilizations did that. The whole idea of Delphi. I don't know if you ever studied that in Greece, right? Delphi was the idea of the navel of the universe. Actually, if you look at a Delphi stone and you turn it upside down, you may notice that it looks like a goblet. That's no accident. Just saying. And it has to do with that letter psalmic, right? And I'm saying all that because, you see, Solomon had this phenomenal wisdom, and he was describing a lot of interesting things in the Song of Solomon, specifically the bride. And then he says, as he's describing her in the 7th chapter, in the 2nd verse, he says, thy navel is a round goblet which never wanteth. What it usually says in your translation is mixed wine. but it's actually water wine. Just saying, okay? So Shazam, I mean, think about what I'm telling you here. The Lord, right, he opened up my eyes to behold wondrous things. I discovered this morning, actually. And have you ever wondered about the navel of the universe? Apparently, man has since the beginning, right? We talked about Stonehenge, Delphi. There are 1,000 other monoliths, and notice how many of them look like a navel or an upside-down navel. Yeah, Bob.
I have not been here for several weeks, and every time I come here, I rarely have any clue what you're going to pull out and throw at me and share with the world. And but so many times it's such a parallel to my life. And you're talking about the center and the navel and being centered and what you're centered on and what you're focused on. And my life's been a little bit different lately because I've been centered on other things, and it just really, I couldn't quit smiling when you started talking today because you always have a message for me. I come here thinking I'm going to give, I'm going to give, and then I get every time.
Well,
and
believe me, the reason I have it, you know what, Bob? I had no clue. I didn't. I just sat down, like, where are we going today, God? And I have sat in the weeds for about an hour until I came across these ancient Hebrew writings that talked about this this stone that was hewn out was the center of the universe. And I started to think about a hewn out stone. A hewn out stone. And all of a sudden it hit me, the empty tomb. Like, oh my goodness, look at this hewn out stone, right? And it was round as it could be because there was a round stone that was rolled away, right? And here's this hewn out stone. And what was in that? That was that was where I was set free. I mean, that's where I was set. I may not know where the center of the universe is or the umbilical cord of the universe physically, but I can tell you where it is spiritually, right? It's in that that empty tomb.
Well, when I get off centered, my life reflects it. And this week, I spent some time with some gentlemen from church that I used to spend a lot of time with them. And I'd been away and hadn't been back, and I got to spend some time with them. And a friend of mine went with me, and we just had a really good time. And some other activities at church this week, and some things centered on family and church and local people that's been a big part of my life for a really long time. And when you started talking about it today, it was just like a big bell rang in my head, and I realized that I had been off center for quite a while.
It happens to all of us. Like, I had a day this week that was completely off center, but it's a fascinating thing, very amazingly fascinating to me that Solomon had this wisdom. He actually wrote in Proverbs 3, and I've excerpted a couple pieces of Proverbs 3, 7, and 8, because if you read it this way, it just says, the fear of the Lord, it shall be health to your navel. And the fear of the Lord is health to your... And so you may know that the seventh anointing of Christ was a delight in the fear of the Lord, right? And so if you think about that as your center, it gets back to that idea of the wonder, right? Because as we realize that, man, those beautiful leaves you're looking at this fall, or that fish that you caught, like we were just talking about, or what is it that you see that God just opens up your eyes like Christmas morning, and you're like, man, look at the wonder of that, or just wonder at the tomb itself being empty. However that looks, the point I'm making, I hope you see it, is that, wow, if that's our center, that we are at the delight in the fear of the Lord, that, like, oh my goodness, what does that open up for us as far as this spectacular world? So that's what I'm asking on the Christian Car Guys show today, because it has to do with freedom, right? It has to do with you were free to move about the country. Once you were cut loose from that umbilical cord, okay? Once you're free to move about the country, what has that led to your adventure as far as delight in the fear of the Lord? I would love to hear your thoughts. 866 866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH, right? Like, how does that exactly play out in your world? So I got a story. Bob, this week I had my mind totally blown. I get to do a radio show that God, I still don't know. I have to pinch myself that I get to do it. It's called Lantern Rescue, and we often interview amazing people around the world. Well, this week I did 3 episodes. I recorded one of them, played today, I believe, with a young lady from the Ukraine. And her story, like, if you don't see the light and the fear of the Lord in her story, like, you just don't have your eyes open. I did not even know, like so many things I don't know. In 2014 is when this war started, and her area of the Ukraine had been invaded. Like, she was in college, right? Sitting there in her room or her dorm room, and she looks out the window, right? And here's helicopters for shooting missiles. Like, can you imagine? Like, there you are in college in your dorm, and all of a sudden you look out the window, and it's like 9/11, only for real, only like that's going on in your world.
There were a few fireworks when I was in college, but it wasn't.
I'm going to tell you more of my, like, oh my goodness, look how awesome God is story. And I want to hear yours. 866-34-TRUTH.
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.
That is my center. It is what I was born with. Eyes that have always seen the wonder in everything. It is my center. What is yours?
You are the center of it all. The universe we bless all. The majesty, I surrender all.
Now we get down to Tax of Brass. I do love that. The Naval of the Universe today on the Christian Car Guy Show. You know, what is your center? You know, what is the naval where you were set free? And how have you wondered this week, maybe today, maybe years ago, however it worked out? You got a story, God's put it on your heart, right? You can share it and encourage lots and lots and lots of people with the way that you saw God, the wonder that was in your eyes. 866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH. And when we left our hero, I was talking about Anya from the Ukraine, who, again, is on Lantern Rescue. You can hear that whole episode. It's unbelievable. But I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. She was lost. And when this attack happened in 2014, you know, after months and months of just complete turmoil of losing her house and saying goodbye to her grandmother for the rest of her life, you know, not realizing all that was coming upon her, she got more and more lost into the point of exhaustion. And she had sort of a breakdown to where she couldn't even get out of bed for 2 weeks. And then her father comes home and says, you know what our problem is? We need to go to church. I'm not kidding you. That was just a true story. And the mother, who was sick with an illness, gets healed. And the next thing you know, they finally get on you to go. And guess what she found, Bob?
Her sinner.
She found out that there was this Jesus who went into a tomb and came out. And because of that, she was set free to move about the country and to see that the person that was really had been looking for, because she was, what had broken her heart was that nobody was really all that concerned about her when they were all concerned about the bombs. But the one person that was concerned about her the whole time was Jesus, right? And when you hear the story, and as I was, you know, realizing what she was sharing, and this all happened in 2014, so she would learn, right, that when the whole country came under attack and there were hundreds of thousands of people pouring into her city looking for help and somebody that did care, it was her eyes, right?
I didn't realize it started that long ago.
No, I didn't either until I talked to her. But I just want to share one other little thing that has everything to do with what we're talking about. So you may know that the average little girl of 8 years old laughs 300 times a day, right? That's how much joy we come into the world with, okay? Before it gets washed out.
Before you grow up.
Right. Well, you could imagine these poor little kids in the Ukraine some of them have not better yet laughed. They hadn't smiled, according to some of the mothers that were talking to Anya, for over 3 months since my child even had a smile on his or her face, right? And so this Christian rap group comes in, and actually their church was like, I don't know if we should have this guy come in and talk to all these refugees, whatever. But their pastor said, do whatever you think. Well, she watched when the music came on, the kids smiled, and they started to have fun. And so she got this idea of doing sort of a vacation Bible school, right? Now, here they are. They're in a place in the middle of the war district, right? And you know, maybe there's 800 or 700 kids in this sort of warehouse facility where all around them is a war going on, but inside of there, the kids are laughing and smiling and loving on each other because they all dress up. The pastor dress up like superheroes, like Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, all these different Superman. You know, that's the pastors and stuff dress up like that. They play music, starts out soft so it doesn't shock the kids. They start bringing it up until they get them to the point where they're laughing, smiling. Then they bring in the real superhero, Jesus, right? To show them, you know, how they too can get a navel, okay? That's filled with mixed wine.
We carried the kids in the youth group. I think it was Carowinds, and we started out, and it was one level of music, and one of the people that showed up there that day, he was a rapper, and I wasn't a rap music kind of guy. You can't have rap Christmas music, Christian music, and I was just, you know, in my mind,
yeah.
And it was one of the best experiences in the world. And all the kids were buying, they would get them a CD from this guy. And, you know,
well, if he was worshiping, right?
Yes, he was. And when I listened to his words, I was like, well, you learned something today. You know, I got a little centered. But, you know, God let me know that it didn't have to be Bob's way. You know, any way you get that message to the kids was a great thing. And I was just
so amazing to me. Because I actually, you know, Bob talked about getting off center. Well, I got off center big time on Thursday, and I'll tell you why. We have the Jesus Labor Love in the Christian Car Guy Show, which is car repair labor for single moms, widows, and families in crisis. And for years and years and years, we have a main form where all the people that have asked for help come in. They fill out an application at ChristianCarGuy.com, and they come into this spreadsheet that fills out and populates, you know, all their information, their phone numbers, all that stuff was all in a form that I had in my Gmail account, which was attached to rdilmore@WTRU.com, because WTRU used to be it still is the call letters of our main, you know, of our flagship station. But unfortunately, that website got hacked years ago, but my Gmail account always worked. Although I didn't have access to be able to create it or the administrative rights to it anymore, it just worked. So I just left the forms there, you know, not thinking that anything would, well, this week it just went dark. And like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden, nothing worked. Somebody came to ChristianCarGuy.com and they filled out an application that wasn't going to work because it wasn't attached anymore to the spreadsheet. And we didn't have access to the people that were, you know, I called Scott, our chief volunteer, and I'm like, man, dude, did you do something? And he was like, I didn't do anything. And I'm like, how did this happen? I can't get to the form. And he goes, I can't get to it either. And so I got to tell you that I was not in a good place. I was not centered at this point in time. I was just frantic to try to find my way. But interestingly, God centered all that, got it put back together. How about you? 866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH. Come on now. I know that you got some eyes full of wonder for something. Call me.
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.
That is my center. It is what I was born with, eyes that have always seen the wonder in everything. It is my center. What is yours?
You are the center of it all, the universe we bless all. The majesty, I surrender all.
The Naval of the Universe. Universe today on the Christian Car Guy Show. What is your center? What is your navel, the place of your birth, perhaps, where you were free to move about the country? And what do you wonder? How do you take that delight in the fear of the Lord as your center, so to speak, as the place that where you get centered? I would love to hear your story. 866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH. And just so I don't rob you of, well, first of all, to finish up the Jesus Labor Love story, yes, we repaired it all. At ChristianCarGuy.com, I created a new form, and it's fully functioning, and actually probably functioning better than it ever did, and it now is in a much more secure location. And yes, I got recentered as a result of what? Honestly, continue to go into God's Word, right? It's just like this morning. I got completely centered immediately when all of a sudden I started to see the wonder of what it was I was looking at. And what I was looking at, honestly, was a Song of Solomon, chapter 7, verse 2. And the first word in that verse is navel, right? And as we've talked about here, navel. Well, if you look at that word in Hebrew, and I do, the fascinating thing is, that the name Sarah, you remember Sarah in the Bible, who was Abraham's wife? Well, guess the root word of navel is Sarah. I'm not kidding you. and in so many different ways, Sarah was Abraham's center, right? I mean, it fascinating. And that, through Sarah, obviously, came Isaac. And, Ishmael didn't count. He wasn't a counter. It was Isaac that was the deal, and he came through Sarah, who was the mother, right? It's fascinating to me that right? It's a shin and a resh, for those of you who are wondering the letters, I'll tell you. But the idea of that is spectacular to me. And then the second word is goblet. And as we talked about, if you want a real joy, I mean, just go look at a Delphi stone. Just Google it. What does that look like? And then turn that thing upside down. And if they don't look like a goblet, I don't know what to tell you. But the next time that you take communion, okay, just so you'll know, you take communion out of a goblet of some kind, probably. Even if it's those little communion, little plastic cups, it still looks like a goblet in its own way, okay? And inside that goblet, you will find what? You're going to find water wine. You're going to have the blood of Jesus. And what is he going to tell you when they take communion every time? This is what Jesus said twice during those statements, right? He said, "Do this in remembrance of me." Okay? That's the gigantic concept between, right? Communion. Well, if you look in this verse about the water wine, when you look at the way water wine is spelled in Hebrew, guess what it does? It's like remembering the Messiah. Okay, you take the first two letters of that water wine.
And his first miracle, you told me this morning when you said that, it just really rocked my world.
Yeah, he turned water into wine. And what it says is that this goblet is never going to want for. In other words, the cups are going to overflow. And we can join the communion table, which, by the way, is a circle A in union, gets back to that letter Samic again. But the idea of this is just like in the 23rd Psalm, right? Our cups overflow because all that want to show up at the table that understand that they can be set free from the same goblet, like they can come on, right? That cup never runs dry.
And it's such a welcoming table. If you do get off center and you get away from the center of the universe, some people think it's so hard to get recentered. It was almost, I'm not going to say I'm fully centered, but a recentering happened to me this morning, and it was quick and it was painless, and there was some joy involved too.
Right. I love the story of the prodigal son, right? What does it say? He came to his...
Oh, you mean my life story?
Yeah, that one. What does it say? It says he came to his senses. What does that mean? He came to his center and he thought, wait a minute, I'm eating pig pods. Okay. I could be eating steak. Let me think through this a minute. Right. What do I got to do? I got to go home to Dad. I mean, that.
Ask forgiveness.
Right.
And receive.
But the deal is, where was it that he got to taste the communion wine? Right. And there's just a beautiful, beautiful picture always of like, man, it isn't hard. Actually, it's so much more fun to be on your way to eat steak, isn't it, than to eat them pig pods. Just saying. I've been there so many times. I can't tell you. I was eating some pig pods Thursday. I can tell you, when we lost all that stuff for the Jesus Labor of Love, right? And I thought, oh my gosh, believe me, pig pods were being consumed.
In large quantity, huh?
They were. And I honestly, I don't know what I don't have any idea how somebody gets from that place unless they go drink some wine. Okay. And here's where you can drink wine. It's freely available to you every moment of the day. It's in your Bible. Okay. It's full of it from front to back. Right? It's God's word. And that goblet never runs dry, because as you begin to drink it, then, right, you all of a sudden come across some truth or something. I behold wondrous things out of his law, like that's in the 119th Psalm. Like, man, as soon as something like that happens, I'm right back heading for steak.
It's pretty amazing. We're talking about navels and centering. And I was helping a family member this week and with a little cleanup project. And I needed to be cleaning inside, but I was more of an outside guy. So I decided I was going to do a little project outside. And I leaned over, pulling some vines, and found myself in the middle of some cactus. And right around my navel, where my little belly is pooched out there, I have got into the cactus, and I have become permeated with cactus thorns.
That actually happened this week?
This week. And,
around your navel.
My belly just got into it. I've got a little belly here, and it leaned over into the cactus, and I was in such a bad way. I had little bitty tiny thorns in my hands, and they're just so hard to get rid of. And then when I got home, I thought I'd got some of them out. I took off my shirt, and there's this circle right around my navel of cactus thorns.
This week, right?
This week.
What day was that?
I want to say Tuesday. It was Tuesday or Wednesday, and but it just they had me.
You found your center.
Yeah. And if you've ever had an encounter with cactus, you have to pull those out one at a time.
Yeah,
But
I
it
grew
was
up in
kinda
New
like-
Mexico. Yeah, I've had plenty of encounters with prickly pears. They are mean. And it's not the big ones that get you. It's those little bitty ones that look like a hair that are stuck in you. You can't see. You got to pull them out with, they're
Hey, you got to hunt hard to find them. And when they get in the thick skin of your hand, but those big ones right around my belly button, it took a while and a little pain. But you were talking about being out of sorts. I was a little out of sorts. But I think that it was a message to me that I was not centered in the right place. I should have been centered on the inside, and I was centered outside. And I got some corrective direction. and I won't be working around those cactus anymore, that's for sure.
That is an amazing story. And, I'm just shocked, Bob, that somebody hasn't called in with their story, poem, something. I know you've got it. And so, man, you guys always make the show. It's the calls that make the show so much better, please.
We might better check the phones and see if that didn't quit working when the email did.
866-348-7884 is the number to call in. If you never called, man, we'd love to hear from you. 866-348-7884. And again, as you heard me talking about the Jesus Labor Love, what we do with that, it's car repair labor for single moms, widows, and families in crisis. Okay, for people that don't know how to get their car fixed. That Christian Car Guy Show, God has given us this place of wonder, because I've wondered for years, like, man, how in the world are we going to make any impact on this situation, right? And then, wow, he shows that, if you just throw it out there and say, hey, we'll help you if we can. We know we can at least pray for you. And like, oh my goodness, does he provide? Again, oh, somebody's calling. Good, I can hardly wait. 866-348-7884. We'll be right back with at least one call.
Well, if you ever plan to go to West.
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.
That is my center. It is what I was born with. Eyes that have always seen the wonder in everything. It is my center. What is yours?
You are the center of it all. The universe is lasting all. Your Majesty, I surrender.
The Naval of the Universe today on the Christian Car Guy Show. What is your center? And very exciting, we have a couple of poets / friends on the line that we're going to get to here immediately. So we got Sarah Linda is in Washington this morning. Good morning, Sarah Linda. How are you?
Oh, I'm just fine, thank you. I'm slowing down on the outside. My chassis is slowing down. My chassis is slowing down.
I understand. I really do. More than you know.
But my inside is speeding up, and so I have to kind of keep centered in the inside. And this is the as I hearing you and so on. Here's what I wrote: the wine poured out from the empty tomb, the best of wine that is of full age, the wonder of new life from the womb, the center extolled by every sage, wholly centered in communion's love, one with the Creator of the all, who watches over us from above, who hears us each moment when we call. And I'm called to him every moment, every day.
Wow.
Believe me.
Man, as always, that is spectacular, Sarah Lynn. And just it encompasses all those things that ran across my mind this morning as I was thinking about
when
this.
When I walk, I have to be very balanced when I walk, and that's sort of what you have in the center of it all.
And that is so true, because it's left, right.
That's right.
It's completely centered. So that
Yeah.
that is one wonderful poem, and I'm so glad I'm going to have to listen to it 3 or 4 times. I often do that with your poems, by the way. I listen to my own podcast, and I go back and I tell my wife, we'll listen on the way home from church tomorrow. I said, we got to hear Sarah Linda's poem. Because they just encapsulate, you just take what God has shown us and just put it so beautifully. Thank you. I can't tell you what a treasure you are, and it is.
It's a gift.
I didn't realize what my name Sarah had to do with it.
That's right. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, there you go. You didn't know that. Yeah, the naval, you're the naval of the Christian Car Guy Show. There's no doubt.
There you go. Without the captain.
Oh, my.
Thank you, my friend. God bless. I'm going to get to Ann. And I love you. Bye-bye. All right. We got Ann Alt, another wonderful poet and friend on the show today.
She is a hard act to follow.
Yeah, she is amazing, isn't she?
Just
God,
love
what a
that
gift.
lady. And I'm going to get to my little poem quick because I know we're running out of time. But oh my gosh, this has been such an amazing show, and how to stay, the necessity of staying in center. I love Bob's leaping into the thorns story, and the idea of look before you leap. How we learn in such interesting ways, making sure overall that we do things His way. Staying in the center is just a marvelous teaching that way, and that it pays to obey. So some time ago, I wrote the poem "The Choice," and that's it: is the choosing to stay in His center. the way of obedience is called the narrow way, a pilgrimage upon a road of choices day by day. You choose the right or left, and then you hear a voice that tells you, child, this is the way. And now you have a choice. Do you obey the voice you've heard and walk the way of light? Or do you choose the other way, the way that leads to night, the darkest night of each one's soul, when they ignore the voice that tries to gently lead them on to make the master's choice, the voice that wishes him no ill, but wants the best for them, the choice that tries with all his power to lead us from the path of sin or of thorns. God only wants the best for us. He knows that he's our best. He has all knowledge, power, and love, and in him is our rest. So listen to that still small voice that guides you every day. Be ready to obey that voice and listen as you pray, and it keeps you out of the thorns for sure, Bob.
All right. How long ago did you write that, Dan?
Oh, years ago.
And so, wow.
But it's always true.
Isn't it fascinating how I just can't even believe that, God showed me this morning and just blew my mind. And then Bob is at an encounter with a cactus around his belly button.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't make this stuff up. There's no way that could happen. And then you call in with this poem. And as I've been taking these walks this week, or actually for just this whole season in my life, for the last number of months, I'm thinking left, right, to get on the path.
Yes.
You have to have this cadence of balance and left and right, and it's all in there, but we wouldn't have it if we weren't free. It's like that whole idea. What are you going to do with that freedom, right? You got your belly button. You've been free from the mothership. And so now you're free from Sarah. Now what are you going to do with that freedom, right? And how are you going to walk in what path? And it's so amazing that he gave us the communion cup. And I don't know if you heard Kingdom Pursuits a few weeks ago. I had this lady who was an expert on the Song of Solomon. She talked about, and I knew this, at a Jewish wedding, you have to sip from the cup. The bride has to sip from the cup of the husband that shows communion, right? And how many weddings do you take communion? Well, I don't know that I ever saw that that's part of the deal when the bride agrees to sip from the cup of communion. That therein lies a marriage.
Yeah.
I think twice I've seen communion at a wedding.
Right. And so I got news. That at our real wedding, we're going to be there's a goblet involved in that, and it's full of mixed wine. I'm just saying, right, Ann?
Amen, brother. Preach it. Yeah, I mean, and as we stay in that center, and pause before we leap, into the thorns, is just the whole thing is just so such a great encouragement to pause and say, "Is this the way, Lord?" To consult Him. He's there for us. He's there for us 24/7. And it's just the idea that He's with us. He will never leave us or forsake us. Those things are not little, pretty words. They're truth. And,
when you're in certain times, those words become huge.
Yeah.
Right? Because I know as you lost your brother, Bob lost his son, that all of a sudden, that path is a lot different than you ever thought you'd walk.
Exactly. But in him, that kind of sorrow and it turns to an amazing kind of unrealistic joy. When I think, honestly, more than sorrow, I'm feeling, and maybe you'd feel this too, Bob, is I get in awe because I know he's with the Lord, and I know your son is with the Lord, and they're, what are they experiencing? The wonder of the center.
I'm a little jealous. I'm a little jealous sometimes, but in no time at all, we'll all be gathered together
in the center,
and I'll be back together with him, and we'll be doing some fun stuff, and can't wait.
That's where that's what the faith is about, right? And so thank you for listening, and thank you for your prayers, right? For the Jesus Labor Love and all the different things that God's doing. And I hope this week you can be centered. Remember, slow down. Jesus walked everywhere he went, got it all done in 33 years. Thanks so much for listening.
This is the Truth Network.